Hey, Roger.
How's it going, Tom?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
A long way from Chicago.
Yes, and you're a long way from Chicago, too.
Here in sunny, not so sunny San Francisco.
No, I'm in gloomy San Francisco, but at least it's 60 degrees. I'm here to attend my daughter's wedding.
Janina?
Yes, Janina will be getting married at City Hall in a couple of days. Apparently one of the more beautiful wedding spots, believe it or not. You don't think of a City Hall as being a pretty wedding spot, but I guess it really is stupendous.
Something she picked out there?
Yeah. And anyway, I'm in the back room, as you saw, of Empress Vintage, her place here in the Mission. And, you know, I guess we're just catching up on old times.
Yeah, we've known each other about, well, over 30 years. We first met on a music video.
We met. You were in a band, and they were shooting a music video, and the guy who was producing it knew me and knew my absurdity and shit. And so he hired me to portray an accountant on the
a geeky accountant?
On the shoot. Yes, I was a geeky accountant. At the time, I did wear a suit. I was one of the short times in my life where I wore a suit to work, like for about a year. And you were the drummer. And after, you know, during the session, we got to talk and this and that. And we said, hey, let's jam sometime. Because although I portrayed a geeky accountant, and I certainly looked like one for the production, I was really a musician.
And I think, yeah, we were taking a break, and I think you and I went upstairs, and there were some extras, some girls that were in the video also. They were up there hanging out while they were doing something technical, and you and I just started talking.
Yeah.
And you had your guitar, and I had some congas at the studio, of course.
Oh, and so we just took it right up there.
Yeah.
Who knows what we played?
I don't remember. I think we had a little smoke, and we were up there in the loft just jamming.
Yeah.
And that's
with dancing girls.
Yeah, there were some really pretty girls.
What could go right?
That was pretty cool. Great. Can you describe the two-man band we had in the 90s and its origins? I think it was the Barking Geckos, right?
Yeah, well, we called ourselves the Geckos. And I had a band in Lawrence, Kansas previously, the Barking Geckos, that was a big, you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 pieces with geckets and costume changes and crazy stuff like that. You dug the name Geckos, and so we just became an offshoot of the Geckos.
Yeah, just
the Geckos, the Barking Geckos. And what the first place we played, I think, was at a bar you worked at in Chicago, Esoteria, and they had an open mic night.
Open mic Mondays, that's right.
Yeah, and we played a couple songs there. And then we started just bouncing around, playing wherever we could. We even played a 16-year-old's birthday party in Hyde Park, I remember.
Yeah, I think my mom was there and her friends. Yeah, they went nuts.
That was crazy. I remember playing You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog to 16-year-olds who didn't even know who Elvis
didn't know the song.
was.
Yeah. And we were handing out percussion toys to everybody, and everybody jammed along.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and so, but our little group, our two-man group, at times we had a background singer, at times we had a stand-up bass player, at times we had a harmonica player. Then I opened my own ad agency. And
what was it called? I can't remember what it was called.
Roger Bain Communications.
Right. Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. And my first client was mailboxes, etc., before they became the UPS store. And so I had this little catchy earworm, mailboxes, etc., and we just, finger popping, little kind of jazzy thing. And I remember I was at Buddy Guy's Club, and Hubert Sumlin was playing, and the stand-up bass player I thought was really good. And so I said, hey, do you want to play in this this jingle, if you will? And you played drums. He played bass, and
it was got a jazzy brush kit, upright bass sound. Yeah.
It sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, I think we recorded that demo in my old house on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah,
before I moved into the studio.
Right,
and you'd come down there
and avoid the dog shit that was on the floor. That was Bad Dog Studio.
Yeah, I had a big old dog, Bad Dog Studios, and you were usually wearing a suit, and you take the tie off and come in.
Yeah, I lived in the suburbs, and I would come into the city, and we would rehearse. We did this for a number of years.
In my studio, I needed to expand, and I rented a place down on Hubbard Street, a little farther south.
Yeah, it was
a big atrium studio. It was a lot more space than I had in my home studio.
It was a giant. Yeah. I mean, you know,
it was a beast.
The live room could have fit the Chicago Symphony just about. It was over a glove factory.
Right. Yep.
Which right. I thought had a lot of poetic, appeal to it.
Yeah.
And because recording above a glove factory is always a plus. And we recorded a lot of stuff there. And see, I was into, I've been writing songs and making music without any end game in mind my entire life. I create the songs because sort of they just spill out of me. I have to create them, but I didn't do it to get chicks, and I only picked up the guitar so that I could write songs. That was my whole point. In high school, I didn't play guitar because I was a jock. I played basketball and baseball. That took up all my energy. You only got so much energy to go around when you're in high school like that. And but I still always loved. When at an early age, I was bitten by Elvis when I was 8 years old, and I loved his music until he went wonky and went into the service and got all square and did cheesy movies with Colonel Parker, clam bake and stuff like that.
Clam bake, yeah.
And then
I loved clam bake.
Oh, you did?
I
Well,
did.
Maybe it's good. I like a good bowl of clam chowder. And then in high school, though, I loved the Rolling Stones. They were my favorite. So I'd always really loved music, and it wasn't until I picked up my first guitar, a girlfriend gave me a guitar, and it basically changed my life.
You've got a new book available on Amazon, Hardly Workin'. Seems like the perfect title. Tell me a little bit about it and what inspired you to write it.
Well, many years ago when my kids were teenagers, I thought it would be instructive to them to find out how their father had made a living through his early life, the jobs he'd had. And so I started writing paragraphs about every job I ever had, starting with being a caddy at a golf club at age 12. And I would write a paragraph or two and then maybe put the manuscript aside for a long time, and then I'd pick it up again. This went on for about 15 years.
So you weren't trying to sitting down and banging out a whole book. You were writing little stories.
Correct. I did not sit down and bang out a book. Yeah. I worked on it for 15 or 20 years, and then I started, I joined a writer's group, and I would read chapters aloud and get feedback. And finally, I fashioned this thing. I probably rewrote it 30 times.
Jeez.
I engaged a few editors to help me with it. But it charts the course of my life through work and all the jobs I've had, in fast food, working at dorms, kitchen help, all that, until I finally founded my own little advertising agency.
Yeah, it's a really easy read, and it sort of takes us through your whole journey into the workforce. It seems you found a really nice bridge between working in the corporate world and writing great music.
Well, yeah, and I didn't work in the corporate world for really very long. In fact, my career, I didn't do it. I graduated college and said, I am going to retire for this decade right after college. So the 1970s, I was retired. I vagabonded, I traveled around, I'd pick up odd jobs, but I did not seek a career. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Then I got hooked up with a little cable TV system in Lawrence, Kansas. I said, hey, I'll sell ad time, And then...
the whole first part of the book is all about the odd jobs you had. Like the first quarter of the book, you really met some odd people along the way. What sticks out to you as some of your personal favorite odd people?
Well, I think the Ace Hamburger Flipper just really
Classic.
got to me. I was working at Lums. It's a chapter called Hot Grease in the Ace Flipper.
Lums, Lums. I remember Lums.
Lums, yeah, they're not in business any longer. But it was a fast food joint. It was in Lawrence. I was probably making $1.50 an hour, something like that. I worked at the fry station, dipping these things they call cheesies, little sandwiches coated with crap, and I got grease all over my chukka boots. But anyway, the big football game in Lawrence was when K-State played KU, and the place fills up before the game. So Lums brought in a specialist who could flip so many burgers at once that you couldn't believe it.
Oh, they flew him in or something, yeah.
Well, he drove in.
Okay.
Let me tell you about Ace the Hamburger Flipper at Lums. The legend drove in from some faraway place, a version of a Kansas gunslinger. When he slipped in the back door, the manager proclaimed, "There he is." All eyes turned to a gaunt, slightly agitated dude who looked like Harry Dean Stanton's half-brother. I couldn't get the notion out of my head that he also looked a bit speckish, as in Richard Speck, the nurse killer. I nodded in his direction, but the flipping ace was already headed to the back room to put on his apron. He carried what appeared to be a mini violin case that turned out to house his customized spatula. It had his name and a date engraved on the handle, commemorating a flipping milestone. It was said that he had flipped 1,000,000 burgers, a true American hero. So Ace was just one of the characters that I came across in those early jobs. You know, you find more characters in some of those temporary jobs, low-wage jobs and such, than you do in the corporate world. I mean, there the characters would tend to be maybe more dastardly or boring.
Give me another one. There's another character that comes to mind.
Well, there was one. I worked at Grinnell Hall in Southern Illinois University, and there was a guy that I referred to as Dishwashing Moses. He had kinky hair, and he had an affectation where he would rock all the time. I can't remember what you call that when you do something like that, but. And he would get stoned on break all the time, as who wouldn't? And anyway, when the line came, the conveyor belt filled with all the dirty dishes, everyone would go, "Roll, Moses, roll!" And he would just be, stabbing at the plates and throwing them this way and that. And he always had a smile. He was always rocking, and he was always telling stories, like when he was thrown in jail in a pit in Colombia, and he spent 3 days with spiders.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them in this book. They were cracking me up all the way through your journeys. It seems like all these prompted you to seek out kind of an alternative way of making a living, avoiding the status quo while still enjoying a good quality of life. A nice wife, kids, house in the suburbs.
Well, the thing is, I never wanted to do anything cookie cutter. Mm-hmm. I just detested that. I grew up with privilege in that I lived in a safe community, a western suburb of Chicago, Clarendon Hills, beautiful little town, and I went to an excellent high school. So when you really think about it, if you grew up like that and you went to a good high school and you got a good education, you're pretty privileged. I don't mean wealth privileged. It was 4 kids sharing one bathroom in a 1,100 square foot house. It wasn't like some grandiose thing at all. But and then, I was an athlete in high school. I did a summer internship with 3M. I was selected amongst 12 candidates to be in their marketing research department. I was in a fraternity. I became vice president of the fraternity. I was clean-cut jock, student, blah, 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 ready to launch into probably the corporate world. But then 1969 came, and my life changed. Mm-hmm. I did nothing but read alternative newspapers, and there was a bit of hash smoking, bit of acid taking. I bought a school bus with some guys, and we cruised around Kansas in an old 1948 school bus. When that occurred, I realized that my life was in my own hands. And so I decided, well, I'm graduating from University of Kansas. I think for the next decade, I am retired. And that's when I vagabonded around and kicked up my heels, lived in some really bizarre circumstances. I slept in Minneapolis. I lived in Seven Corners. I had some friends who had they had taken a Slavic Baptist church and turned it into a waterbed store and boutique. And there was one waterbed in the store. It was in the front display window, and that's my bedroom. So I slept on the
on display
on the waterbed display in the big plate glass window, and outside was a complete wino district. Seven Corners.
Walking by? Yeah.
There were winos walking by. You know, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there'd be some guy puking, 5 feet away from me.
Thank good. You had that thick glass between you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from there, I came out to San Francisco for the first time. I had a friend who was a guitaring friend, Brian, who had taught me some licks. And he came up to Minneapolis and picked me up from the church. I'd been there for a number of months. I ended up selling waterbeds in St. Paul. And I gave Brian my job for 2 weeks so he'd have a little stake to take him out to California. We came out here because we had tickets to the final Grateful Dead show at the final time at the Fillmore West. The Fillmore was closing down.
That's here?
Yeah, that was here in San Francisco. Yeah. Bill Graham's Fillmore West. Yeah. And so it was, the Dead were, the ultimate San Francisco band at the time. And so we went to the show, and that was, I think, 4th of July, 1971.
You wrote a lot of clever and original jingles for radio, as I recall. I remember recording the demos in my Chicago studio, and then you'd actually go out and land the account.
When I realized I could start my own ad agency, I had been in advertising sales. I dealt with a lot of small ad agencies in Chicago, and I didn't think any of them had any creativity whatsoever. So I thought, my gosh, this will be right up my alley. I'm going to start my own thing. And it succeeded for about 20 years, the last 20 years of my career. But the first one I got was Mailbox, etc. I think I explained that.
Yep.
And we recorded in your studio, Tommy. And then I did one for Berlin's House of Tools. I'm a tool man. Do you remember that one?
I do. I remember one for Gloria Jean's Coffee Beans as well. And
the Gloria Jean's business, I was in a mall with my wife, Linda. It was a Sunday, back when I hadn't sworn off malls for life. And there was a Gloria Jean's gourmet coffee franchise we passed by. And it had popped into my head a couple weeks earlier, this little song, Gloria Jean's coffee beans are the prettiest beans I've ever seen. And so I walked into the store. I said, where's the manager? The manager came out, and I said, hey, I got this song about Gloria Jean's that I want to produce. And I sang it to him, and then he gave me the name of the guy who ran the joint, who is actually Gloria Jean's husband.
Oh, he liked it. He liked the tune.
And he liked it, and produced it, and it was great. I think we produced that at Chicago Trax Studio. Did we start it? We didn't start Gloria Jean's at your studio, I don't think.
I think we started it. I've lost track. There were a few of them that we did, but I think we did most of those in the new studio on Hubbard Street.
Yeah.
There might be one we did back in the
I remember
studio, but
the Gloria Jean's. I remember the clarinet player, because I think he played in Ramsey Lewis trio. I'd go out, I'd see a musician, then I'd say, hey, you want to play on something I got going?
Well, you'd get gigs, you weren't just coming up with ideas. You would actually go out and get an account. I remember getting paid pretty well for session work. You know, I'd come to Chicago Trax to record the drums.
Right.
You know, I'll get up to that a little bit, but you know, at the end of the day, we were paid pretty well. You know, for those accounts. So it was good money.
Yeah, it was, and it was mainly fun. But I saw music was my entree into making myself unique in in advertising. So I opened Roger Bain Communications, and Mailboxes was my first client, then Berlin's House Tools, and so on.
Berlin's was a big one for you.
Yes.
That was a huge account.
And then also Dairy Queen, all the franchises of Dairy Queen in Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana. But like for Dairy Queen, I wrote, I didn't call them jingles, I called them 60-second product songs.
Nice.
And I wrote a song about every single product Dairy Queen had. And I would try to fit the music to the sensibility of the product. And I did, my main collaborator in those is a guy named Chuck Kawal, who is a brilliant producer and guitarist and engineer. It was amazing. So the Chicago airwaves were filled with these 60-second product songs, you know.
A few of those did really well and aired for years. You were able to travel all over the place, as I recall, and I remember some pretty nice restaurants you would go out to sometimes too. You were able to travel, you know, kind of around nationally, not even internationally.
Yeah, and that was just the perks of the advertising business.
Yeah.
And there were plenty. It was nice, you know. When you're in a certain aspect of media, you have a lot of tickets and lunches and trips and everything at your disposal, and so it was nice. And really, it was all because of music. Because if I hadn't, you know, with Dairy Queen, my entree into them was the fact that I had Mailboxes as a client, and everyone knew that Mailboxes' little stinger, Mailboxes, etc. They knew that, and so I got in to talk to them, and then that's when I proposed. In fact, the big meeting I had with the franchisees and corporate was there, and the ad agency corporate had, which was Campbell Methune out of Minneapolis, multi-thousand people worked there. They were all in suits, and they give their presentation, and then I walked up there, and I sang. I sang a song, you know. I sang maybe the Peanut Butter Boogie, the cake you don't have to bake, and I also wasn't wearing a suit, and none of the franchisees were wearing a suit either, you know. And so I think I connected with them well. And anyway, that was the start of it. And, you know, it was a pure blast, because the airwaves in Chicago, I would also buy the media time, you know. So maybe the Peanut Butter Boogie, they had a peanut butter parfait sale for $1.99, and I would buy 12 different radio stations, maybe, you know, 5 or 10 spots a day on 12 stations for 2 weeks. And so, you know, you'd hear this
So
stuff.
you weren't just not only writing the song, coming up with the ideas, writing the songs, rehearsing the musicians, getting them recorded. You would actually go out and buy the airtime on the radio. So it was a full communications company.
Absolutely. No, I did that. I had learned, I had been in cable TV, and I'd learned quite a bit about quantitative and qualitative research and rating points and cost per thousand and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I put that to use. And it's rare in advertising when someone who does the creative also does account management and also does media placement.
Really unusual.
It was no one did that, so I did it all. I was a one-man band, although Janina, my daughter, she helped me for a while. I had another assistant, Stephanie, who's a phenomenal jazz singer, and she helped me for about 5 years. She was great. Cool. So I did that until it all went kaput, and then I retired, and then I started spending more time writing, hardly working.
With those songs, I remember we would take the multi-tracks from my studio over to Chicago Trax on, I think it was on Halstead. On Halstead? We'd record the drums, maybe some bass at my place, and then you'd go over to Chicago Trax, usually add vocals because they had some top-end mics.
Yeah.
And we'd mix there.
Yeah, we'd finish it there.
Or we do overdubs. We didn't just take, you couldn't just take I had a little Akai tape deck. They didn't have one, so we'd have to physically take the whole tape deck, which weighed a ton.
Right.
The whole damn tape deck over to Chicago Trax. They would plug in, I don't know if they transferred it to their system or just ran it, but they had a nice SSL console.
Oh yeah. Chicago Trax was a absolutely beautiful studio. And
SSL console, 2-inch tape, great sounding rooms.
Yeah, a great live room.
Yeah,
and
top-notch engineers.
Yeah,
I don't know if the place is still around or not.
It isn't.
Long gone.
It isn't. Okay. No, it from that location it moved, and then it went kaput. There aren't that many big recording studios in Chicago anymore.
What a shame.
Because of that.
Yeah.
You know, everyone does stuff in their bedroom.
What did you do when they closed? Because you had a lot more work to
I
do.
went over to a place called Studio Chicago. One of the engineers from Chicago Trax opened up his own studio.
What was his name?
Studio,
do you remember?
Al Orsini.
Okay.
And we would call him Peanut. But the one constant there was Chuck Kawal. He was my co-producer, engineer guy.
He was an engineer there.
Yeah.
I remember Chuck. Chuck worked that SSL console like a magician. He was just amazing with drums. And,
No. He still is. When the big studios closed down, you know, I had done a lot of recording at Chicago Trax, then Studio Chicago, and then I got a Pro Tools system set up in my office. I had a little 3-room office, and so Chuck would come there every Thursday.
This is to your house in Arlington Heights, Illinois?
It wasn't my house. It was an
office.
An office, yeah.
Okay. In Arlington Heights?
In Arlington Heights, yes. And so Chuck would come there, and I would just work. If I didn't have anything commercial work to do, we'd do one of my songs. And so he learned Pro Tools there, and we got a lot of great sounding stuff. And in reality, the difference between what it sounds like in Pro Tools recorded in an office versus an elaborate 48-channel, SSL studio. I mean, you have to be an engineer yourself pretty much a lot of times to tell the difference. So expediency ruled, and it made it manageable, because at the time buying Pro Tools wasn't that expensive, Since then, or even before then, when I think of the studios that I've recorded in, I mean, there have been so many basement studios. There was an attic studio, living room studio, a storefront studio in a downtown, and genuine recording studios as well. And the very first one was in Topeka, Kansas. I recorded a tribute to Ernie Banks, the Chicago Cubs.
Thanks, Mr. Banks.
Thanks, Mr. Banks is the name of the song. And
we used to play that, the Geckos. We used to play that.
We played that out. All summer long when I was a kid. Seems about the only thing that I did was play baseball and follow the Cubs. My middle dresser drawer filled up with bleacher ticket stubs. This is 1979. I'd been writing songs for a half dozen years when I decided to write an Ernie Banks song. 5 years had passed since he'd been inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and I thought my boyhood baseball hero warranted a song. Thanks, Mr. Banks would be a tribute to baseball, youth, Ernie Banks, and the Chicago Cubs. After jamming on it a few times with my music mates, I knew I had to record it. A record. Now, Sound recording was an expensive endeavor in 1979, done mainly by popular recording artists signed to record labels. Putting out a 45 RPM vinyl record was an uncommon undertaking for someone like me, an unheard of nobody. But my $6,000 workman's comp settlement from the broken ankle incident had finally arrived and was burning a hole in my pocket. I deserved to make a record. At least that was my reasoning. Linda, my wife, my pragmatic partner, suggested that $6,000 would make a nice down payment on a house. But she knew my heart was in making a record. If it had been her ankle, we would have bought a house. So I recorded that at an 8-track studio in Topeka, Kansas. It was a professional studio, and this was back in the tail end of 78 or
way back. So it was like 8-track reel-to-reel probably.
Yeah, it was reel-to-reel. Yep. And we got a really nice sound out of it, and that was great. I recorded 2 songs there and put out a 45. Mm-hmm. And
I might have some of those 45s.
Oh, yeah, you probably do. You might have 100 of them.
No, I got a little stack like that.
I had 10,000 pressed.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it was crazy. And that was...
45s?
Yeah. And that was
thanks, Mr. Banks. Backed with what?
Weather Girl was on the flip side. And we used to play that out, too. We had our own version of Weather Girl that we would play out.
It was steamy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd get somebody to come up and do the weather report. The sexy weather girl would come up.
Yeah, from that studio...
Mm-hmm. In Topeka?
Yeah, I didn't really go into a big studio again until probably the early 90s. Mm-hmm. I had probably a 7 or 8 year span where I would go from Chicago to Lee Summit, Missouri, like a few times a year to record with Mitch Rosenow, who had been a member of the Barking Geckos back in Lawrence. Mm-hmm. Mitch Fabulous. And we would spend 3 days recording nonstop. And from that, over those years, we probably have about a 15-song collection that is really unique and special. But I did that for my own enjoyment. I think a lot of times it's the creation that excites me the most. And I usually I'm on to my next creation. And maybe that's been a flaw. I should have seen through some of these creations that I did to achieve more artistic success. But then, big deal. What, I'd have a more expensive car now? You know, can't take it with you. You can't take those things with you. You can take your soul with you, I think. I'm not sure about that, but I think there's a fairly good chance your soul might accompany you to the next step. And so that was more important to me than the things.
You'll still forget your guitar pick, though. You'll be up there with
well, that's why I can play with my fingers. I better not forget my fingers.
Methods have changed so much. Now you can just Dropbox high-quality WAV files all over the globe. And it's really a great way to network. You used to have to go to the studio for the sessions, although I still prefer the camaraderie of working live in the studio with musicians, especially as a rhythm section.
Yeah, but we recently I just did an album a few months ago called Scenes from Dreamland. Mm-hmm. I did it with a guy named Geoff DeMuth, who has a basement studio in Crystal Lake, Illinois, Little Pink Studio, and Geoff can play any instrument at all. A lot of them I had written maybe 30 years or 40 years before and never recorded. Mm-hmm. A couple were new. But it was thematic. They all were about a place. Mm-hmm. So there's a sense of place in Scenes from Dreamland. Like the opening cut is My Baby Went to Chokoloskee. Chokoloskee is a place in the Everglades. Right. The next song was One Night in the Heights.
Arlington Heights.
And that's because I live in Arlington Heights, but it could be about any heights.
Could be Bernal Heights.
It's more like about a moment in time where you had an amazing time one night that you will always remember.
I love that song. It's a great one.
Yeah,
I think that's my favorite on the album.
And then there was Wisconsin Mushroom Hunt, which I wrote on our honeymoon. And Kansas Rhapsody, I wrote that back in Lawrence, Kansas. I probably wrote it in the late 70s, and I didn't record it until 2024, which was pretty remarkable. But on all the new recordings, I needed drums. And that's when I said to Geoff, I got this friend Tommy that I used to play with all the time. We record together, we gig together. Now he's got a nice studio in Hawaii. I'm going to ring him up and see if he could do the drum parts. And he's not going to fly here. Nope. We're just going to fly over the internet, the tracks for him to listen to and play to. And that's what we did. And you talk about the camaraderie. Well, there was a special camaraderie also about just doing that back and forth. And yes, it would be on the phone that we would.
Right. The camaraderie we'd already established from working as a group. That's what I'm saying.
You and I.
You wouldn't have made that call if you hadn't known me from the years I played with and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was that worked out really well. And
do you think it made for a better vibe, though, and feel as a rhythmic section to play live? Sometimes, like when we first started, we weren't even using a metronome clip. The focus was like that time Mitch came down. I don't know if we were recording to a click back then or not, but it seemed like more of the focus was on each other as musicians, and not like today where everybody's so focused on locking to an exact grid, quantizing drums, and going for pitch perfect vocals every time. I sort of missed the looseness, but
yes, because a lot of times good music isn't a function of perfection. That can get in the way, I think. And we used a click track for Scenes from Dreamland. Basically, I would go in and I would put down my acoustic guitar first to a click. And then I would put down a scratch vocal. And then Geoff would put down the bass part. And then we'd talk about, what else is going to go in here. And Geoff might have a second guitar part, and he'd put that in. And
drums and percussion were like last.
Were absolutely last because actually when it started, I was thinking, I don't want no stinking drums on this. I don't want. It's just gonna, But I'm certainly glad we did because I freaking love everything that you played, and I thought it was a cool experience to do it. Because we couldn't have pulled it off. It would have required you flying there and putting you up and doing all this stuff. We already had
we turned
the
it around
tracks.
on a dime. I'd send the drum tracks back to Geoff, and he'd mix it that morning or something, and then send the mix back to me for mastering. He chose to master.
So what that did also, it allowed for there to be two serious engineers on the project.
Right.
Which
you're no spring chicken either in the studio.
No, I'm no spring chicken, but I'll tell you, I'm a songwriter. I'm a writer, and I'm not a knob twiddler.
The engineer used
I've twiddled a knob or two in my time and pushed a fader.
Yeah, I've seen you do it.
That I always work with somebody who that is their specialty. Like you.
Everybody's an engineer now. Everybody's got a laptop. But I remember the engineer used to have some really good technical skills, like being able to punch in on a multi-track tape deck on a dime. You couldn't just hit enter.
No.
You had to kind of do a two-finger thing and anticipate a few milliseconds before where you wanted to. And if you messed up as the engineer, there was no undo.
No.
You were recording over the previous take, basically. So you couldn't mess up the punch. And you had to decide, kind of it was if you wanted to erase the previous take,
Right.
or the punch, if it was worth that risk. You know, if you're trying to punch in and do it better, but it was always that decision you had to make: is it worth that risk?
Right, right. There was certainly more of a live and organic feel to that, but I think for most musicians, playing live with a band, and if you can get the tracks down that way, that is a...
The rhythm section, maybe?
Yeah, because you have the opportunity, it's a better opportunity to play off each other and discover some new riff or path or whatever,
or even an accident
of the song. Yeah.
Stumbled into a key that you hadn't played
right.
in, or like...
As opposed, because like when I handed you those tracks, well, you couldn't change the tempo, you couldn't change, you know, the feel of the song. You know, you could somewhat, but it's already set in stone. I suppose that if we got a whole group together and played those songs for a week, I bet the album would sound different than it does now.
Yeah.
Would it be better? I don't know. I have no idea. But, going back to the very first time I recorded at Exception Studio for Thanks Mr. Banks, I don't know if I played, I think I just played to the drummer, I think that's where I got my time from.
Used to be put down that pretty much always put down your drums and bass first.
Yeah.
Sometimes the drummer had a little click track attached to his hip.
Right.
But that was even kind of a modern device. But it was usually the drums and bass, and then you would overdub your guitars, vocals, and add embellishments at the end.
Right.
Now it seems like more often than not, I'm adding drums, percussion after everything else has been added.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all tossed on its head. Because I've recorded so many times, so many songs, so many commercial pieces, jingles, product songs, where it starts with me listening to a click track in the headphones and me playing to that. And I'll tell you, I'm not that good at doing that because I detest it. It seems so artificial. And also, I don't think you can play... Well, a lot of times, though, we'll get that down, and then maybe when the production's further along, I'll go back and replay my guitar part.
So just put down a scratch at first. You know it's not going to be the final.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It used to be such a different process than it is now. It seems like everyone has a laptop with a DAW and a zillion plugins,
Well, that's the digital world. Everyone is a Photoshop graphic designer, too, I don't think creativity hasn't improved an ounce over the last 40 years, but efficiency has, and so when efficiency hit the digital world is all about efficiency and speed. I got a song called Speed, Greed, Efficiency, the mantra of society.
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah. First of all that stuff you're describing, I'd leave that up to someone else than myself.
Do you think there are still realistic avenues for songwriters and musicians to make a living, or is the market simply too oversaturated?
I would not know that much about songwriters making a living from original songs that they write because I have never been one of those. I have made a few dimes here and there with my original songs, but it's mainly been my commercial work, which was how I had music and songwriting work for me in the commercial sphere. But I don't know, if today, I think anybody who has heart, soul, and brain, kind of basically what Dorothy had with King of the Forest and the Tin Woodsman. Those guys. If you have those attributes, go do it. In fact, I wrote a little thing recently that was based on kind of my version of what might be going on today. She got on a train in Des Plaines and took it out to Pingree Road. She wrote songs in her notebook as life rushed by as she wondered what might unfold. She had a job waiting tables at a Mexican place right here on Highway 14. She was saving up to buy a Martin guitar, ready to make the scene. She wrote songs about her hometown and her first love. She seemed to be on some kind of quest. She was trying to describe the particular vibe you find here in the Northwest.
That's nice. That's nice.
The Northwest suburbs of Chicago is what I'm referring to. But I think there are always going to be those dreamers who think that they're songwriters, and many of them are songwriters. But I don't know if it's, boy, you'd have to ask some record exec if they still exist. If it's any easier today to have a successful career.
What do you think? What do you think will be the future of songwriting and record production? Are we in trouble? Or will there always be a market for good, organic music played by real musicians?
Well, the thing is, isn't it going to be, is this organic music or is it AI? AI has so quickly crept into everything. And I don't doubt right now that there are songwriters using AI as a tool, as a helping tool or something.
And there's record companies that are using AI so they don't have to pay their artists.
Yeah.
They own the song, they own the copyright, because there's nobody wrote it.
So my advice for any young songwriter is just do it for the love of writing songs, and do it because you have to do it, because you got songs in you that have to come out, and there's no other way around it. And whether you're going to make a dime from them or not, you got to do it because it gives you momentary joy. You know, when I'm playing on the back porch, or when I'm playing on the front porch, or the basement, or anything like that, it's just I'm putting on a little. I'm playing by myself, but it's like I'm putting on a little concert for God.
Yeah. Is that all new material, or does some of it go back a ways?
Yeah, the tunes on Scenes from Dreamland, when I look at them, quite a number of them I wrote in the 1970s and never recorded until recently. And a few of them I wrote very recently. In fact, the final song, Daysville, is a song about my family, the Bain family.
It's a haunting song.
Yeah. I wrote that over a course of about 5 or 6 years. You know, I'll start a song and then I'll just put it down. And sometimes I don't get back to it for a decade.
Yeah.
And that's happened with a lot of songs. But on Scenes from Dreamland, there are a number of songs like that that I just never, I forgot about. I wrote in the 70s and then I brought them back. That one, Summer's Gone.
Yeah.
I wrote that at the latest in 1980.
Is that about driving down to Florida to get away from Chicago cold?
Well, no, that was actually, it was more like, for me, this kind of dreamy song about somebody who's just kind of on the loose and free and decides they'll quit their job and pack their trunk and head on down south because it's getting too late to pick the rutabagas up here north.
Right, I get it.
It's
a great vibe on that. I thought it was about a winter vacation, kind of getting away from cold. But it's
well, that's a nice thing about songs, isn't it? Because everyone can have their own interpretation of it. And in fact, trying to explain what a song is about can be a pain in the ass.
Are you and Geoff working on any new songs, or are you mostly writing more books and stories?
No, right now, Geoff and I didn't really record this year. We didn't record anything new this year. We recorded, well, we added the drums to a lot of songs like we talked about, but kind of have taken some time off, and we'll start again next year.
Okay.
But I am working on a memoir about the town where I grew up, Clarendon Hills.
Oh, okay.
It's called Clarendon Hills Kid. And I feel I have to get it just right, so I've been obsessing over it for quite a while now.
Oh, okay.
And I hope to have that off my deck sometime in the next few months. But the song that I have worked on most recently, I have a good friend who has Alzheimer's, and I was trying to put myself, what must be going on in his mind.
What's it called?
About memory. It's called Try to Hang On.
Oh, sweet.
And then I thought, no, this is a song about aging. And it could relate to even more people. And then we had the recent election, and I thought it was more like we're just going to have to try to hang on in the Trump era. Let me get my guitar, and I'm just going to play.
Okay, I'm not going to try to keep you from your guitar.
There was a time when the future seemed long. Can someone tell me where that time has gone? All I can do is just try to hang on. Yeah, yeah, try to hang on. Whoa, try to hang on. I'm never certain if I'm right or wrong. I can't remember if my phone is on. All I can do is just try to hang on. Yeah, yeah, try to hang on. Oh, try to hang on. Here we go. It took a while, but the world has gone wrong. I'm in a place where I no longer belong. Hell with that, I got to stay strong. Stay strong and try to hang on. Yeah, yeah, try to hang on. Try to hang on, yeah. Try to hang on, whoa. Baby, now try to hang on. Watch me now as I try to hang on. So many friends have left this town. Some are living and some have gone down. We all are seeds that the wind has blown. All we can do is just try to hang on. Keep the faith and try to hang on. Stay strong and try to hang on. Bang the gong and try to hang on. Try to hang on. Try to hang on. I think this better explains how I came to be who I am from who I was. And this is my attitude in about 1970. I didn't believe in society's institutions, but I did have my beliefs, very strong ones. I believed in the magic of existence, the magic around every corner, the magic of the moment, and now the magic of guitar playing. During that melting summer of 1970, alongside teaching myself to seem crazy, I began the lifelong endeavor of teaching myself to play the guitar. I wanted to write songs. My inner voice needed an outlet. Because I hadn't begun playing during the typical teenage time frame, I had a lot of ground to make up. A girlfriend bought me a cheap acoustic. I picked up a few songbooks, one by Donovan, I remember. Had guitarist friends show me chord changes, and I was hooked. Nothing has had a more profound effect on my life. You can get Hardly Working on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, I don't know, all sorts of other places. You can get it wherever fine and not so fine books are sold, any kind of book. But I guarantee you will like it. There's no money-back guarantee. There's just my personal guarantee, which is good for something, and you'll know that it's good for something once you read the book.
Do I get a kickback or anything, Roger, on this?
No.
No?
Also, I got a song, Hardly Working, but I play that with a pick, which I don't have. You know, I think I could use some new duds. I don't know, a new jacket, a new hat or something to go out into the San Francisco afternoon.
It's chilly out there.
Let's go out there and see what she's got. Oh, girl.
There's such a thing as love, sent from heaven up above. That's how it felt that sunny day. We knew that love was here to stay, and we walked behind the cabin. The cedars whispered and the squirrels were jabbing. We commenced to start our hunt. Our Wisconsin mushroom hunt. Oh, we might not